The hardest thing in the world to do is to follow a really good speaker. So thanks a lot, Isa. Now, I'm in a bit of an uncomfortable position as a person because, unlike Joe, I'm not a natural speaker. So I cheat. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask everyone who are not in the first 5 rows to come forward, please. Right now. Let's do it. And you'll watch that. I expect certainly all the university students to be coming forward so you can inspire everyone else. Come on. Let's feel the love, guys, as the Americans say. You too. Let's do it. And I expect people to squeeze in, okay? So make space for each other and really move in. That, yeah. I expect you guys to be leading this. Come on, let's do this. This part of the conversation is called Let's Get Going. So let's get going. And if I could have the Mum of the Year right over here, that would be great for me. Thank you so much. So now, no, right here. Right here. Thank you so much. Okay. Now think about this. I said the first 5 rows. So who do you think I'm going to ask to move? The 6th row, right? Come down here. No way am I having the university students not be able to do maths. Come through. You're in the 6th one. Trust me. Because for a second there, I really got worried. I said, I don't count till 6. What's happened here? Come down here. Let's do this, guys. All right. Thank you so much. There's actually a point to what I'm doing. I'm trying to show you that wherever you are in life today, the truth is that you are stuck. And I'll explain what I mean by that. And maybe that's why this part of the conversation is called Let's Get Going. May I just get hands raised by the people who are currently not at university here? Okay, thank you so much. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and try to connect this whole to Let's Get Going and how it started. This year is an anniversary of mine. This is my 20th year mentoring. And yes, I am that old. I started out mentoring purely by accident. So when I was growing up, I had absolutely no interest in helping another human being. None whatsoever. And I started out through pure luck and bad marking by teachers. I managed to get into university. There should have been no reason I got in, but somehow I remember an exam. Actually, there are 2 exams. This is the slightly better one, where I thought, my God, I must have failed, right? Even I would have marked it, and I got a B, and I was like, thank God for, has anyone heard about all these scandals where teachers mismark, and a lot of people are crying because they didn't get to university and they don't understand? I'm the beneficiary of that. I'm the one who didn't get the good marks, right? So some clever, really smart, dedicated person didn't get in, and I got in. And even then, never felt guilty about it. Went in university, felt really entitled. So I get in, and you'd think life had been pretty good to me, right? Got into university, didn't do much, etc. Now I'd be grateful and I'd do something about it. No chance. So I went in, and in life, and some of the things I'm going to tell you are important. This is a very important sentence. In life, you will attract the kind of people that you yourself are at that time. Because I was generally lazy and no good, I attracted at university people who were the same. So, 2nd and 3rd years, who, in a sense, if you call, became my first mini mentors, as Joe said. And they said, listen, the first year at the London School of Economics doesn't count, right? So as long as you get E's, which is about 30% in every exam, you're fine. And nobody in the 10 years prior at the London School of Economics had failed their first year. I took that as a challenge. So I created a regime whereby every day I'd wake up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And the reason was at 1:30 there was a program called Neighbours, a soap that was on. So I had to watch Neighbours, so I'd get up at 1 and start watching this program at 1:30. After that, because I'd been to an all-boys school and suddenly I was interacting with girls, so I spent 2 hours dressing, right? Trying gels on, trying different clothes on, and 2 hours of my life. I'd get in at 4:30 into school, just as the last lectures were finishing for the day, and meet up with everyone. And because this was in London, we would go to Oxford Street where the girls would go window shopping, right? So when you're 18, 19, you guys will be much more mature than I was. You would do anything just to hang around with girls, right? So if they wanted to go shop, you just walk along just to spend time with them. So we'd go window shopping till about 7, then we'd all go for dinner, then a movie, then we'd go to a nightclub from about 10:30, 11 until 3 in the morning. And then you'd end up at someone's place, just talking about philosophy or anything. Mostly the guys were just trying to sit around looking intelligent. About 6 o'clock, you'd end up asleep somewhere, and then next day you wake up at 1 because the Neighbours regime had to be kept. That was it. At the end of the year, but I was still in my head feeling fairly confident. I was like, I've never got less than a C in any exam in my life. I'll be fine. And so I'm there. And the first moment I knew that something was wrong was I'm sitting in the exam room, and I'm sure I did a TV interview about this a few years ago. And the girl in front of me suddenly burst into tears and ran out of the exam room. I looked over and she'd written twice as much as I had. So I knew, okay, something is a little wrong here. But I still thought, no way, I'll be fine. But just in case things got really bad, I had an insurance policy. My insurance policy was that I told the university my friend's address to send my grades, right? So that my parents wouldn't find out if it was really bad, because, otherwise my pocket money dries up, right? I'm too lazy to get a job, so depending on father. So thinking that I'm all set, I'm secure, I go to Pakistan in August, and one day we're all sitting around. So in my house in Pakistan, there's like this 3-seater sofa, and a 1-seater there, and a 1-seater there. I remember my mom sitting there, my dad sitting there, and I'm sitting on this 3-seater in the middle, and they're just talking about, now that I'm going to go to university, how life's going to be so easy, and, my mom had this plan, get me married in 4 years, blah, blah, blah. And the phone rings, okay? And I pick up the phone, and it's this lady goes, hello, this is Miss Nixon from the London School of Economics. And I'm like, hello, Miss Nixon. First, why are you calling? And she goes, is this Muzaffar Khan? I said, yes. She goes, I want to tell you, you failed, right? Now, a lot of you guys here will be a lot smarter than me, right? When you hear something like that, that's bad for your investors, the people are like, you shut up. You say, I'll call you back. You put the phone down, right? But I panicked, and I had no control of my vocal cords, so I'm going, what do you mean I failed? And part of my mind is going, shut up, stop sharing information. But I can't. I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, and I still remember this, she goes, I think I made myself quite clear. And I go, what do you mean I failed all the subjects? And I said, fine. And she goes, yes, all of them, goodbye. I put the phone down. My mother explodes. You're a disgrace to the family, you've let us down, how can you do this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm beginning to panic. I'm not panicking because of her. I'm panicking because the big man hasn't said a word yet. Why is he quiet? Right? So you have to understand the background to my family. My father was head of anti-smuggling in Pakistan, right? This is a man who beat people up for a living if they were drug smugglers. I had once seen him many, many years earlier. I was about 7 years old, and for some reason my dad liked his chapatis hot, and my mom was like, what do you think, I'm going to cook for you? And, you know, that kind of relationship. She wore the trousers in the family, and we all accepted it. And but, you know, he liked his chapatis hot, so as a 7-year-old, I'd rush to the local shop, buy the chapatis, come back. And some 16-year-olds started bullying me. And first 2 days, you know, I came back without the chapatis and my money gone, and my dad was like, what happened? I was like, I made up a story the third day. He goes, what happened? I said, this boy is bullying me. So he took me around to that boy's house. He was working at someone else's house. And he dragged him out on the street and beat the living daylights out of him in front of me, in front of a 7-year-old. Imagine what that does. And it wasn't like, you know, the kind of fights that guys have, right? Where you're walking around and just hoping the other person gets tired and backs off in the middle. You know, he professionally beat the living daylights out of him. As I said, so I've always been like, I was a good boy ever since. I never at home, never gave my dad any trouble. And here's this man who owns a gun, I know it, he does. And he gets up and he starts walking away. And my mom goes, well, where are you going? We need to discuss this as a family. And my dad goes, you discuss it, I'm going to go get my gun. She goes, don't be stupid, he's your son. Right? Stop being a child. He goes, I got 3 more. He already calculated. He goes, if I lose this one, I'll never have a problem. Nobody else will fail in my family again. Right? And I still maintain my father was the best mentor in my life. I never failed again. Ever. I ran upstairs to the first floor, got my ticket and my passport, jumped out of the first floor window, left Pakistan. Didn't see my father again until I graduated years later. Okay? The reason I'm telling you that story is that I understand those of you who feel like they're stuck, you know, who feel like every day, oh, I'd rather not do anything, right? I'd want to mess around, etc. Because I am that person. If given a chance, I will be as lazy as possible. It was a very credible threat to my life that got me to graduate. But it did teach me something quite interesting. What it taught me was that when I am incentivized enough, I will change. And we all will. If we are not succeeding in something, it is because the right incentives aren't there. There are other aspects of my life story which I think help you see this. So I graduated. So my dad, you know, on my graduation, hugged me, etc. Told me that whole story. I imagined it. You know, he was just bluffing, etc. I'm still not sure. Then I went and did a master's in English literature. My incentive for doing the master's in English literature at this point, again, understand how incentives work in our brain, right? So graduated, got my dad happy, right? The minute my dad takes the foot off my ass, basically, I start to relax again. I go, okay, fine, dad's happy, money's flowing again, what do I do next? I go to King's College London, and which is literally across the road from LSE, and some of my friends had invited me, and I walked down one of the corridors, just we were going from one side of King's to another, and I look in a class, and this class is 19 girls and 1 guy. I look and I go, what class is that? And they said, that's the MA in English Literature. That's how I did my MA in English Literature. I joined that end of that year and started my MA because I was like, oh, I could talk to girls. No interest in career at this point, right? Because remember, Dad is well off as far as I'm concerned, right? So he'll take care of me. The incentive structure is not there for me to work. So I get my MA, etc., come out of it. And my dad is like, okay, well now, do something with your life. Work, do something. And I'm like, well, you know, I didn't do so well in any of my interviews. So I'm not a natural interviewer, right? So whenever I go into an interview back then, people would just generally say, you know, go away, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, if they don't want me, I don't want them. So I had very much an attitude. One of the reasons that mentoring that I was actually very successful with 14 to 18-year-olds from 1993 was I truly understood this chip on the shoulder. That if someone didn't like me, I was not going to turn them around. So I literally said, okay, fine, I keep getting rejected at interviews. That's it, I'm going to sit at home and do nothing. So my dad and I had an argument. My dad said, I'm cutting you off. I was like, fine. I had saved up about £10,000 from all the time that he'd been sending me money, so I thought, I've got plenty of money, you know. I thought this money will last me forever. So at this point, I became a carer to two people, my sick grandparents. So my grandmother was dying from cancer, and my grandfather had Parkinson's disease. And for the next 2.5 years, I was their full-time carer. So every night after 8 o'clock at night, I'd look after them. And I'd hand over to professional carers at 8 in the morning. Now, the reason, so there have been all these stories made up about what a wonderful person I am because I was caring for the elderly. I was doing it because I was getting free rent, right? So please understand my incentive. I wasn't, yes, I love them, but also I didn't have to work for a living if I looked after people, right? So there was definitely that element of that incentive was free rent, I'll go and help someone. During the day, at this point, the Bosnian War started, the Yugoslavian War, if you like to call it, and you know, a couple of people mentioned that it would be good for us all to contribute. And through social pressure, for the next 2.5 years, I was working full-time during the day for this charity, Humanity First, where we would get food and clothing for the war-ravaged countries and send them. That was the time when my first sort of social mentorship started, where people came up to me and started saying, what are you doing with your life? Why are you always so angry? And I was, right? I was like, why do people, you know, I'm a smart guy, why do I fail interviews? You know, why won't people respect me the way I want to be respected? And these guys said to me, look, there are people who through no fault of their own have lost parents, children, brothers and sisters, and here we are sending food to them so they can survive on a day-to-day basis. Every emotion that you have around the chip on your shoulder is a luxury. You have a choice. None of these people do. I am so hard-headed that it wouldn't get through. Right? So they were telling me this stuff. They were telling me that, you know, my entire problems were my own creation. Nobody else's, my own. And I wouldn't listen, right? I am the world's expert at justifying myself. And I was like, yeah, you know, people shouldn't disrespect people. If they just, I don't want to work for anyone who doesn't respect me. I'll be fine, I'll get by. Literally, I kept arguing like this. The day I stopped was not because suddenly I saw sense, but there was another couple of incentives. My grandmother died at the end of 1994, beginning of 1995, and when she died, there was changes in the family, and some of my cousins could start taking over and helping with the family and so on, because they had grown up. I was the eldest cousin. And there was less money. I'd run out of my £10,000, and literally there came a day when I didn't have enough money for a bus pass. And that's what drove my next change, which was I rang my dad up and I said, dude, I'm an idiot. And he goes, what are you? I'm an ass. Right? So he made me go through a few adjectives about what kind of person I was. It really made me humiliate myself. Because he was saying, you've just thrown 3 years of your life away. And I said, I realized that. And I couldn't get a job anywhere, right? I'm 25 years old at this point, 26. I have no job. Now, I sound really good on the CV, right? This guy who's got 2 degrees, who's, you know, helping the world with a charity, who's been looking after sick grandparents. But the reality is that from a professional perspective, I was completely stuck. And I needed mentors. Again, an incentivization process drove me to that mentorship. So I, you know, rang my dad, and my dad spoke to a few people, and I went to see this guy who was head of Citibank Private Wealth Management, or number 3 in the UK. And he said, why should I help you? And that was the first time somebody had turned around and done that to me. You know, mostly whenever I'd asked for help, people had given it. But this time it's like, what am I getting out of it? That was the first time I understood that mentorship you cannot just stay around and expect mentors to fall out of the sky. You also have to sometimes do something, right? Because in this life, like anything else, mentorship does have value. The reason why you want to be mentored by someone is because they're successful in some way, right? You want something from them, whether it's advice, help, investment, whatever. You've got to make it sometimes worthwhile as well. You guys are very lucky that you're here and I'm speaking to you and this is a free transaction, but not all the time in life will it happen that the people you need to be mentored by, you can get access to them. So I had to find a way to incentivize him to help me. And I thought, well, what have I got? And what I did have was a couple of degrees. His son was 16 years old and wanted to go to Cambridge. And I said, I'll help your son get into Cambridge. He said, you help him get in there, you got a job. So I did. I tutored his son in interview techniques, in his exams, helped push him forward, and he got into Cambridge, gave me a job, and my life started again. Now, you would think at this point, I'm just going to make sure, because normally I get half an hour, but I don't know if we have 5 minutes. Okay. You think normally that I would learn, okay? So that now I'm in a job, I'm on a track. Still didn't learn. 2.5 months later, I'm at Citibank Private Banking. I'm on top of the world, I've got everything possible. And this guy, who's the #3 guy in Citibank, brings me in and he goes, Muzaffar, I'm going to have to let you go. I was like, why? You're the boss, right? You can do anything. That's what nepotism is, right? And he was like, no. 2 vice presidents walked in here and said they will resign if you stay. I was that bad an employee. My first job, senior people were ready to lose their livelihood rather than work with me. That's pretty impressive. I actually never heard that anymore. Yeah. Exactly, you should have seen what my father said about that. So I was like, well, what did I do? And he said, all these customers come in, and because we had really serious multi-millionaires in their private jets coming in, etc. And they expect us to organize tickets to Wimbledon, Lord's Cricket, to the BAFTAs awards, all these fancy stuff. All you do in the meetings is you have all these brochures about charity and say, why aren't you investing more in charity if you're so rich? And I learned probably the last lesson that I needed to learn in my life about mentoring at that point, which is that there's a time and a place to have different conversations. I got that wrong. I got basically let go. I didn't get fired, but they didn't renew my contract. And I got very lucky. There's a whole story of how I then got back into life and then became quite successful. I was a currency trader, then I was a chief strategist at a hedge fund, wrote a book, I'm a film producer. All sorts of things happened after that over the next 15 years. We don't have time to go into the rest of my biography, but what I want to explain is that from those early years, what I learned was that I need outside incentives. I need mentors to help me and identify when I'm being lazy and call me on it. So I'm lucky today that I actually do it the opposite way. Today, as of this moment, I don't have mentors. What I do is I use my mentees. So every day when I'm helping people, so basically over the last 5 or 6 years, I've spoken to about 5,000 students a year in different universities across the world about mentorship. And what I do is, I then have some professional mentees, and I work with them, and every time I see a problem that they have, where they're getting stuck, they're being lazy, they're being defensive, they are not replying right to opportunities, they're being disrespectful, etc., I ask myself, is that problem still in me? I try to have open and honest conversations with myself, okay? And say, where am I failing? And there is a tendency in me to basically say, oh, actually I'm doing pretty well. I'm rich, famous, blah, blah, blah. But the key to success in life, the key to let's get going, is to tell yourself the truth. If you're aspiring to something and you haven't got there, there is a gap between what you're aspiring to and how much effort you're putting in an intelligent way. Always, always, always judge yourself by that yardstick. If there's a difference between your aspiration and you, something is missing. Go out and find the mentor who will point out where the problem is. So how does this relate to aspirational poverty? Aspirational poverty is where we just give up. We don't even want to aspire to anything. And many times in my life I felt like doing that. Once I retired from the city, I went off and spent time in Tibet because I was like, well, let's find out, why do I need all this money, right? Or another time it was, well, why do I need to, always have my name in newspapers or whatever? And I realized something that I read in a book, and it was really moving actually. It was a concept that you only get one life, right? Maybe we get reincarnated, I don't know. Right? But in this lifetime, every day you can get up and say, I did my best, or you can get up and say, I don't feel like getting up. I promise you, getting up every day and feeling like you've done your best is an amazing feeling. Try it, just for a few weeks, and see how you feel. Okay? Thanks a lot.